per month. Visit ChevroletofMontebello.com for details. Together, let's drive.
At Chevrolet of Montebello.
Is this the tether?
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Tonight at Crypto.com Arena, we will learn a lot about the Lakers' mental toughness. Can they rise up and beat the Denver Nuggets? The Lakers have lost 10 straight to the defending NBA champions. Anthony Davis needs to get the ball more often in the fourth quarter. In Game 2 on Tuesday, AD took only one shot in the final 19 minutes. That cannot happen tonight. 7 p.m. tip-off for Game 3 on TNT. The NFL Draft kicks off tonight. The Chargers have the number 5 pick. The Rams are at number 19. This is the Rams' first pick in the first round since 2016. Former USC quarterback Caleb Williams is expected to be the number 1 overall pick by the Chicago Bears. Williams is one of 2 black quarterbacks that could be taken among the first 3 picks. The other is former LSU quarterback and Heisman Trophy winner Jaden Daniels. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is dedicated to empowering our communities by providing progressive talk radio for our audience. We strive to be an intersectional voice for the voiceless. As a Black-owned and operated station, we are committed to highlighting diverse perspectives and creating safe spaces for meaningful dialogue. We believe that everyone has something unique to bring to these political, economic, social, and cultural conversations, and we don't shy away from the hard conversations about current events. We endeavor to be a beacon of hope and understanding, while boldly challenging listeners to think more deeply about difficult topics that impact us all. With this in mind, our mission statement at KBLA Talk 1580 is simple: to create an inclusive platform that promotes civil discourse through honest dialogue and encourages personal growth among our listeners, so they can become the active agents of change. Our vision is to establish ourselves as the premier radio network with relevant programming across the beloved community, connecting people through shared experiences and collective power for lasting impact beyond these challenging times.
Live from historic Leimert Park in Los Angeles, California, I'm Tavis, Smiley, and I'm so glad to see you and me back in stride again. Before we get started with today's show, let me invite you to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at The Real Tavis Smiley, and get updates on X, that's formerly Twitter, at Tavis Smiley. By the way, should you miss any part of today's program or want to catch up on previous shows, you can always visit thetavismiley.show.com. That's thetavismiley.show.com, or wherever you get your podcast, and listen to the Tavis Smiley podcast version of this live program at your leisure. Another great show on tap for you today. In our second hour, his passion for systemic change is driven by his abiding love for his wife, Kira, who passed away following the birth of their second child. Kira underwent a routine C-section following an uncomplicated pregnancy, and hours later, she died from internal hemorrhaging, despite adamant pleas for help from medical professionals by her husband and other loved ones. Kira's story exemplifies the current crisis in America, rising rates of black maternal mortality, and the silencing of black voices. We will talk about it in hour 2 with Kira's husband, Charles Johnson IV. In our third hour, Monique is back to talk about what she calls the greatest comedy tour of her career thus far. We'll get our laugh on with Monique in hour 3. But in this first hour today, a conversation with Edward Ahmed Mitchell of CAIR, the Council on American-Islamic Relations. Edward, good to have you on this program, sir. How are you today?
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
It's good to have you on the program. Thank you for your time. A lot to talk about in this hour. I've been wrestling for a couple hours now with how to frame this hour properly, and I think this is where I want to commence. And I want to start by reading a few paragraphs from a story today in the New York Times. Let me give them credit. It's in the New York Times today by David Leonhardt. It's his piece. And the piece is called Dueling Priorities, and I think it will properly frame where I want to go, at least where I want to commence this hour. Dueling Priorities. Take a listen. Arnold Kling, an economist, published a book a decade ago that offered a way to think about the core difference between progressives and conservatives. Progressives, Kling wrote, see the world as a struggle between the oppressor and the oppressed, and they try to help the oppressed. Conservatives see the world as a struggle between civilization and barbarism, between order and chaos, and they try to protect civilization. Like many frameworks, Kling's is a simplification, and it's easy to find exceptions, but his book has been influential because the framework often sheds light on political arguments. The debate over pro-Palestinian protest at Columbia and other universities has become an example. If you want to understand why university leaders are finding the situation so hard to resolve, Kling's dichotomy is useful. The central question for colleges is whether to prioritize the preservation of order or the desire of students to denounce oppression. That is powerful. And I think that is a proper framing for how we navigate a good part of this hour, talking about what is happening on college campuses unabated. With that start, Edward, your initial thoughts.
No, I think that's a fascinating observation of what's happening. I think there is absolutely some truth to it in terms of the general worldview that our two major political philosophies in this country hold. However, I'm always hesitant to ascribe to people or explain their individual political positions by one overarching theme that somehow dictates what all progressives or all conservatives feel. I think in particular the issue we're seeing about Gaza and Palestine is something very unique and specific. Young people have spent the past 6 months looking at video footage of mothers grieving over their slaughtered children, of churches and mosques and hospitals being bombed, and they've seen our government support all of these war crimes, and they're very upset about that. And they've grown up in a generation which they were able to learn about issues related to Israel and Palestine, not through the bias of mainstream media, but directly through social media. They were able to see what was happening there for themselves. And they'd grown up alongside more Palestinian and Arab and Muslim classmates than their parents did. And not to mention progressive, Jewish kids who also are supportive of Palestinian human rights. And I think that explains why young people on college campuses are so upset about what's happening, because there is they believe a genocide happening in Gaza right now. And so, yes, I think you can generally explain, why progressives or young people are more open to being sympathetic to Palestinians by the framework that the author noted. But that doesn't explain it all, because you've got, in our country, the Democratic establishment, people who call themselves progressive, who are still overwhelmingly indifferent to the suffering of the Palestinian people. It's really young people that are the most sympathetic to what is happening to the victims of the killing in Gaza. And so I just think the simple fact is that they're seeing what's happened for themselves. They are concerned about it because they have that human feeling that has not been tainted by years of media bias.
It is, I agree with Everett, an oversimplification. The writer of the article even suggests, David Leonhardt even suggests that it is an oversimplification, no question about it. And yet the central issue is why universities and colleges are having such a hard time reeling this in. I put that in air quotes. I'm in LA right now. We're heard across the country, but it was chaos on the campus of USC yesterday. So this is spreading, and it is spreading like a wildfire. Just getting started in this hour with Edward Ahmed Mitchell of CAIR, the Council on American-Islamic Relations. More when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Interrogating and unpacking. That's what we do around here. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Hey y'all, Mona Swain here from Target's new YouTube series, My Cart is Full, where we feature Black founders and creators highlighting their connection to our community. As an actor and content creator, I love using my voice to inspire young Black women who look like me. When it comes to feeding my shine, seeing myself reflected in Black-owned and founded products at Target brings me joy. Together, we are Black Beyond Measure. Learn more at target.com/Black Beyond Measure.
Cookie wants to be a professional wrestler.
I'm Cookie Serratos and I'm 11 years old.
She also wants to win all the medals. That's why Cookie and her family make every day count, squeezing out her best with Go-Go Squeeze.
Okay, Cookie, let's break for a Go-Go Squeeze.
Go-Go Squeeze Fruit on the Go pouches are a nutritious snack made from 100% fruit with no sugar added.
Go, Cookie!
Because when you nurture your kids, you squeeze out the best in them. Squeeze out the best with Go-Go Squeeze. Not a low-calorie food. Products range from 11 to 13 grams of sugar and 60 to 70 calories per serving.
Some days I cover up because of my moderate to severe plaque psoriasis. Now I'm hitting the road with clearer skin thanks to Skyrizi, Risankizumab Riza, a prescription-only 150 milligram injection for adults who are candidates for systemic or phototherapy. With Skyrizi, 3 out of 4 people achieved 90% clearer skin at 4 months. And Skyrizi is just 4 doses a year after 2 starter doses.
Don't use if allergic to Skyrizi. Serious allergic reactions and an increased risk of infections or a lower ability to fight them may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check for infection and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms such as fever, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, or if you plan to or recently received a vaccine.
Thanks to Skyrizi, there's nothing on my skin, and that means everything. Ask your doctor today about Skyrizi, the #1 dermatologist prescribed biologic in psoriasis, and visit skyrizi.com or call 1-866-SKY-RIZZI to learn more.
We used to argue about whose turn it was to clean the gutters, but then I had Leaf Filter gutter protection installed.
Wait, I told you Leaf Filter had free inspections and estimates and a lifetime guarantee.
Meaning we never have to argue about whose turn it is to clean the gutters again.
But I visited leaffilter.com/beacon first.
No, I did.
It doesn't matter who. Visit leaffilter.com/beacon to schedule your free gutter inspection and get up to 30% off today.
See representative for warranty details. Promotion is 20% off plus a 10% senior or military discount. 1 discount per household.
Did you know that feeling sluggish or weighed down could be a sign that your digestive system isn't working at its best? Taking Metamucil every day can help. Metamucil fiber powders help promote your daily digestive health using a plant-based fiber called psyllium. The gelling action of this special fiber traps and removes waste so you can feel lighter and more energetic. Metamucil, promoting digestive health for a better you. Learn more at metamucil.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Let's get back to more of Tavis Smiley right now.
Of Everett Ahmed Mitchell right now on Tavis Smiley as we talk about a number of political issues. We are commencing this hour today talking about the escalating crisis, some would call it, the escalating situation, to be sure, on college campuses all across this country. Unabated, given the crisis in Gaza. In case you've just tuned in, I read a piece a moment ago in the New York Times today that really tries to frame why these universities are having such a heck of a time addressing this particular issue. It harkens back to other days in this country's past where colleges and universities were hotbeds of protest. And so here we are once again. And there are all kinds of tentacles that offshoot this politically, socially, economically, and culturally. And I want to get to some of that in this hour with our guest, again, Edward Ahmed Mitchell of CAIR, the Council on American-Islamic Relations. So, Edward, let me go right at that question. One of the central questions, there are actually 2 or 3, but why do you think that universities are having such a difficult time in this moment trying to navigate this current crisis?
The problem, Tavis, is that universities do not want to be morally consistent, right? For years, you've had universities that have emphasized we support free speech, we support the right to protest, And those values were tested the moment students started using their right to protest to speak up for Palestinians. And then the university started facing immense pressure from their donors, from media outlets, from conservative politicians, even some liberals, to silence Palestinian student activism. And no doubt some students have decided to engage in acts of civil disobedience. They have disrupted speeches by, anti-Palestinian campus speakers. They've staged sit-ins on campus. And so, yes, that has tested the policies of schools. But the fact is that colleges are accustomed to dealing with that, and colleges often praise peaceful acts of civil disobedience. And so I think the main issue that colleges and universities are facing is that they cannot deal with the pressure to silence Palestinian student speech. And instead of working with these students, instead of addressing their concerns, like why didn't you put out a statement condemning the genocide in Gaza the same way you condemn the horrors of October 7th? Why are you investing our tuition in partnerships with the Israeli government when you would never do that with, for example, the Russian government or some other government committing human rights abuses? Why aren't you speaking out against anti-Muslim and anti-Palestinian hate the same way you speak out against anti-Semitism? If the schools would simply address the concerns these kids are raising rather than sending in the NYPD or the LAPD to arrest them, the situation would not be so tense. But the problem is schools and universities would rather smear and silence these students than address the concerns that they are raising. And again, that's in large part because of the external pressure being put on these universities by media outlets, by advocacy organizations, by politicians who are very pro-Israel, very hostile to Palestinians, and simply cannot tolerate debate about this one issue. They don't want to win the argument. They want to silence the argument altogether.
Let me probe your thesis, that these institutions are morally inconsistent. You may be right about that, but let me probe it. You do realize that most of these institutions are run by the same, again, air quotes is radio, you can't see me, the same liberals who apparently run and are behind the liberal media bias. I don't buy any of that per se. But if there's moral inconsistence, it's moral inconsistence on the part of these liberals who are running these institutions. So help me make sense of that part.
No, that's absolutely completely true. And the reason is something called progressive except for Palestine, meaning that for many people, not many, but many in the establishment left in this country, they will stand up for every minority community's rights. They will speak about any issue of injustice except for the issue of Palestine. Then all of a sudden, all of their principles and their morals fade away, including the principle of supporting free speech. So that's what's unique about this situation is the issue is Palestine. If these kids were protesting about Ukraine, or some other issue that the mainstream left is okay with, you would not see cops being called out to brutalize them. It's the fact that the issue is Palestine that is causing this cognitive dissonance among the Democratic establishment, among the liberal establishment. So that's why I think it is. I think if it was almost any other issue, if it was Black Lives Matter or anything else, you would not see schools reacting this way. And in fact, some schools have even allowed far-right extremist speakers to speak on their campus, despite outcry by students. There was the guy Milo Yiannopoulos, whatever his name is, this very extreme, who was MAGA before MAGA existed, right? Who spoke at USC, despite objections by students to his bigotry, his anti-Muslim bigotry. The school protected his right to speak at the invitation of students there, right? That same consistency, that willingness to stand for free speech no matter what, that does not exist now because of the issue of Palestine. And I'll give you one example, Tavis. At USC, you may know the valedictorian there, Sister Asna, brilliant biomedical engineer. She was selected as valedictorian. She was scheduled to give a commencement speech, and pro-Israel voices threw a fit because she one time shared a link on her social media to a page supportive of Palestine and supportive of creating one state in which Israelis and Palestinians live together with equal rights. They threw a fit, and the school took the unprecedented step of canceling her commencement speech. And the school said they were doing this not because of any issue with her, but because of the level of harassment and threats they were getting from anti-Palestinian voices. So again, would the school have ever given in to that sort of hate if it was directed at an LGBT person or a Black person? I can't imagine happening. But Palestinians are fair game in this country.
Let me just, since you went there, let me follow you. The whole country has been reading about this situation at USC, and let me just apologize. Well, I'm not going to apologize. I do want to I do want to share this sentiment, but it's not an apology to all of you Trojans who are listening right now. Just brace yourself, because I'm about to go in on USC. So all the Trojans, just brace for effects, because I'm frankly sick of USC. On a number of different fronts, and this is my personal soapbox. I acknowledge that up front. We're heard across the country, Edward, but I'm based, as you know, here in Los Angeles. And USC just can't stay out of its own way. I have never in my life seen an institution of higher learning that is as regarded as USC has been, that just can't stay out of its own way. Every other day, there's some new drama about the University of Southern California. And I quite frankly don't understand it. They've gone through a number of different leadership changes, and they just can't seem to get it right. They can't seem to stay out of harm's way. This is, I believe, one of the worst decisions they ever made. And let me just take it a step further. Once they canceled the young sister who they had chosen as valedictorian, who they taught about genocide studies. She learned about genocide studies on their campus.
Right. That was her minor.
That's her minor. And then they choose her. The institution chooses her to be the valedictorian. And then they decide to cancel her, and they give us this hocus pocus stuff, this phony stuff about security issues. Hold up. Presidents of the United States have spoken on the campus of USC. One former president's daughter went to USC. Or may go, I don't know if she's graduated yet, but you know what I'm talking about. Barack Obama's daughter is a student at SC. My point is, U.S. presidents have spoken on that campus. There is no security threat at all like a president showing up. Secret Service shuts everything down for miles to accommodate the safety and security of a president. So you're telling me you can have a president of the United States speak on the campus of USC, but you are scared of a threat about a young sister who's a valedictorian speaking on that campus? Get out of here. Ain't nobody stuck on stupid. I am sick of USC and all this drama and all these lies and stories that they keep making up. I've had it with the Trojans, with all due respect. Now, having said that, the question I want to ask is, that's my commentary. I'm done now. Back to you, Edward. Since you raised it, you got my blood boiling. Now I'm back to you. But let me just ask you, again, we're talking about the difficulty, the struggle that these institutions are having trying to navigate this particular reality, this particular moment. How wrong, how badly, to your mind, did USC screw this up?
It's remarkable, because it would be one thing if USC just said, look, we object to the position she has taken. We think it's hate speech, and therefore we're not going to, let her speak. I would object to that. That would be wrong. That would be a lie. But at least it would halfway make sense in some sort of consistent way, that you've drawn the line at some sort of speech you're not going to tolerate. But to lie and claim that you're not going to let her speak because of threats and harassment that you think will disrupt the speech. I mean, it's unprecedented. I've never heard of a university saying, you can be the valedictorian. We love you. You're great. There's nothing wrong with what you said. No issue at all. It's just we're afraid of disruptions, harassment, so we're going to cancel your speech, and we're going to cancel the speeches of all the other planned outside speakers who might have been pulling out because of an objection or decision. It's so ridiculous. It's so self-destructive. And again, it gets back to my point. The extent to which people are so terrified to speak up or allow speech about Palestine, because that is the one consistent thing here, that everyone seems to lose their minds and drop their morals and their principles when the issue is Palestinians. That is the through line through all this, whether it's what's happening in UT Austin, USC, Columbia, anywhere. It's that one issue. And so, again, I think if it was anything else, if she was, again, a black student, and I say this as an African-American, if she was a black student who was supporting Black Lives Matter, if she was LGBT and supporting something to that movement, I don't think the school would have given in to any level of harassment and threats. They would have held her up as a martyr and protected her by any means necessary. But they just got a bit of pushback because of the Palestinian issue, and they folded, like a house of cards.
I'd only add to your list one other name of persons who they have protected at USC in the past, Ben Shapiro. They protected him in 2018. So I'm sorry, Trojans. I'm sick of y'all. I'm sick of USC. I'm sick of your campus. I'm sick of your leadership. I'm sick of all this drama from one issue to the next. I can go for those in LA, I can go from MRT to this graduation valedictorian commencement speaker who they canceled. Just don't get me started about USC. But here's the...
Tavis.
Yes, sure.
And Tavis, if I could jump in there, and the irony of Ben Shapiro is that he is an anti-Palestinian extremist. This is a man who once wrote on Twitter that Arabs like to bomb stuff and live in sewage, right? Which is a racist, incredibly racist statement to say. And he's never apologized for it. And yet again, they had no issue with that individual speaking at their campus and protecting his right to speak. So it just shows you, again, it's perfectly okay to be a racist against Palestinians. That you can excuse. But if he made that remark, about another community, the Jewish community, the black community, maybe it would have been a different story. But again, we're Palestinians. Fair game.
Let me connect another dot that I have not. I thought about this last night. I literally woke up at like 3 o'clock in the morning with this on my mind, such as my boring life that I can't even sleep thinking about the show the next day. So I woke up literally in the middle of the night thinking about this. I haven't heard anybody make this connection yet, but I want to see if you and I can make a connection. I've got 2 minutes now. We'll start it, Edward, and continue it when we come forward on the other side. But I wonder if this moment was in any way predictable, given what happened months ago, when those college presidents were hemmed up in front of the U.S. Congress. What we saw with President Gay, who was dismissed at Harvard, the president of UPenn was dismissed. Everybody remembers that moment when these college presidents showed up, and maybe they didn't answer the question the way they perhaps should have. But the point is that I could see then that the issue of free speech on college campuses, that issue wasn't dead. That was really the start of something. This has been going on for quite some time now, but that was a crescendo moment in this conversation about free speech on college campuses when they dragged these presidents in and gave them the business in front of the U.S. Congress. I wonder, to your mind, whether or not, again, this could have been predicted, that we'd find ourselves in a moment right now where there'd be this tug of war about what free speech really means on college campuses, given what we saw then.
Right. So that hearing was ridiculous in multiple ways. So number one, you had far right individuals on that hearing committee who have completely ignored incidents of not just anti-Palestinian speech and anti-Muslim speech on campus, but actual incidents of violence. At Columbia, you had a pro-Israel student spray a chemical weapon, the skunk spray allegedly, on pro-Palestinian student demonstrators. At Stanford, you had a kid getting rammed with a car. You've had numerous incidents like UT Austin, right outside their campus, a guy screaming racial slurs, stabbed a Palestinian and tried to take his Palestinian flag away. So the Republicans on the committee completely ignored all that, and they focused solely on anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is real. It should be condemned any time it arises. But they exaggerated the instance of anti-Semitism, and they just made up hypothetical questions. They, for example, asked the school leaders, if kids are calling for the genocide of Jewish people, is that wrong? Well, kids aren't calling for the genocide of Jewish people. That's completely made up. So they had all these wild hypotheticals, and the school presidents, should have just answered, yes, that is wrong.
Exactly.
It's not happening on our campus. It's a completely made-up hypothetical. But if someone called for violence against our Jewish students, that would be unacceptable, wrong, a violation of rules, period. But these school leaders were so caught up in their talking points and whatever bad advice they've been given, they couldn't answer dumb questions simply. And so sometimes a dumb question just needs a very clear, simplistic answer. So it was a ridiculous theatrical hearing. But ever since that happened, Tavis, now you've got college presidents who are terrified of meeting the same fate. And so now they're being oversensitive and they're just reacting very badly to any criticism related to speech about Palestine.
Sometimes it can be very difficult to give a simple and smart answer to a very dumb question. But I take your point. I hope not to ask you any dumb questions in this conversation, but I do have more questions I want to ask. But you're right. Those presidents, I think, missed a moment, a high moment for moral clarity. They just missed a moment at moral clarity. I digress on that. More with Everett Ahmed Mitchell when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
For all the freedom-loving folk, this is Tavis Smiley.
I feel like freedom.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know the United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time? Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. The abortion issue is heating up in the U.S. The Supreme Court Wednesday heard a closely watched case over whether Idaho's near-total abortion ban conflicts with a federal law requiring hospitals to provide emergency care. Also on Wednesday, Arizona lawmakers voted to repeal a Civil War-era abortion law that bans nearly all abortions. In Georgia, we're now learning the funeral for Atlanta hip-hop pioneer Rico Wade will be a private service. His life will be celebrated at the historic Ebenezer Baptist Church, where close to 70 members of Clark Atlanta's band will be playing outside Friday. The African-American music producer who founded the musical collective Organized Noise died at the age of 52 nearly 2 weeks ago. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Visit Chevrolet of Montebello for spring savings. Lease a 2024 Chevy Trax for $249 per month or a Chevy Equinox for only $199 per month. Visit ChevroletofMontebello.com for details. Together, let's drive.
At Chevrolet of Montebello.
Is this the time? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Tonight at Crypto.com Arena, we will learn a lot about the Lakers' mental toughness. Can they rise up and beat the Denver Nuggets? The Lakers have lost 10 straight to the defending NBA champions. Anthony Davis needs to get the ball more often in the fourth quarter. In Game 2 on Tuesday, AD took only one shot in the final 19 minutes. That cannot happen tonight. 7 p.m. tip-off for Game 3 on TNT. The NFL Draft kicks off tonight. The Chargers have the number 5 pick. The Rams are at number 19. This is the Rams' first pick in the first round since 2016. Former USC quarterback Caleb Williams is expected to be the number 1 overall pick by the Chicago Bears. Williams is one of 2 black quarterbacks that could be taken among the first 3 picks. The other is former LSU quarterback and Heisman Trophy winner Jaden Daniels. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Bank of America has powerful digital solutions for local and global businesses, so you can make every move matter. Visit bankofamerica.com/banking for business to learn more. Bank of America N.A. Copyright 2024.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
JP Morgan Chase is building on the investments in California to help close the racial wealth gap and build a more equitable future. Visit jpmorganchase.com/racial equity and get the tools to help reach your financial goals.
I'm going out with the girls this weekend. Nails done, outfit stunner, and my skin, I
know it's going to be glowing because I glammed up my shower routine with new Olay Indulgent Moisture Body Wash. It smells so luxurious and moisturizes deep into my skin with its super rich, creamy lather that's bursting with vitamin D3. So my skin glows and my confidence grows. Try new Olay Indulgent Moisture Body Wash for glowing skin in just 14 days.
Hi, this is Quentin. A little thing I love about Chick-fil-A chicken strips are how satisfying they are. The chicken strips are amazing. They're always filling, crispy, tender, and juicy. Definitely one of my favorite things on the menu. Especially when you add in that Chick-fil-A sauce. Always the perfect combination. And then personally, you know me, I'm getting a 4 count. I want as much chicken as possible. I'm that guy. Whenever I get them, whether it be lunch or for dinner, in my household, it's always a winner.
Order the chicken strips on the Chick-fil-A app today. Real customer paid for their testimonial.
He's rooting for everybody black. Everybody black. More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
Earlier today, Ahmed Mitchell of CAIR, Council on American-Islamic Relations. Earlier today, I heard in the car on the radio, Tina Turner's song "What's Love Got to Do with It," and I ask now, what's money got to do with it? We're talking about the difficulty that these college presidents are having navigating these protests. We've talked in this hour about free speech and where the line is, and why it is that there's a moral inconsistency, as Edward put it, when it comes to the free speech that we will protect on college campuses. And it seems to me that there is a direct link here that we haven't really talked about. You and I both know it. The audience knows it for that matter. But whenever you see this kind of upheaval, you can best believe there are a bunch of donors who are screaming and yelling about X, Y, or Z. It's the same thing that in part undid Claudine Gay at Harvard. When the donors get involved, when the donor base gets upset, then you got an issue that needs to be navigated. To your mind, what's money got to do with what we see taking place on these campuses right now?
Well, at Harvard and Columbia, you've seen, very major donors to both universities threaten to withhold funding or actually withhold their funding. Robert Kraft, the owner of the Patriots, said he was no longer going to support Columbia because of, what he perceived as they're allowing protests that are unacceptable to him. And you've had numerous people at Harvard do the same. So, absolutely, at the end of the day, colleges rely on money to function. And college presidents keep their job not only by doing a good job on campus, but by showing that the institution is in a strong financial position. So if you have donors that start dropping off or cutting funds, even though these universities are well endowed, it doesn't create an extra risk to their survivability. It still looks bad for their bottom line. And so no doubt, you have major donors who are wielding their financial influence to try to pressure universities to crack down on student speech in support of Palestinian human rights. But I think it's important to note that at the end of the day, the most important thing to any institution of higher learning should be its student body. If the students do not feel safe on your campus, if students do not feel the school will protect their rights when push comes to shove, then you've got a bigger problem than a few angry donors. Your institution itself has a reputational problem that will damage it for generations. And ironically, Tavis, Columbia University, I just saw this, still has on their website an apologetic statement about their decision to call in the NYPD to clear anti-Vietnam War protests back in the 60s. And on that statement, they note that it took years for the school to restore the reputational damage done to it by their decision to call in law enforcement to suppress their own students. And yet we see history repeating itself again. And again, part of it's because of the anti-Palestinian racism and indifference. But yeah, a big part of it is the pressure they're feeling from, again, outside sources, advocacy organizations, media outlets, and yes, their donors who are hostile to Palestinians.
Yep. What's your read on the issue that many of these students are raising on these campuses all across the country, literally from California to the Carolinas now? There are protests. There are these solidarity camps I mentioned a few days ago that are being set up pretty exponentially. They're growing exponentially across the country. But one of the issues that these students are raising is not just a protest with disconnected from an agenda. The agenda is divestment. They are raising a number of issues, but chief among them is this issue of the U.S. divesting from the billions of dollars that we send to Israel. to engage this war, never mind the chastisement that comes out of the mouth of Joe Biden every now and then directed at Bibi Netanyahu. The aid is unabated. And these students are raising the bar, it seems to me, on the issue of divestment. I don't know that there's any traction in Congress for a real conversation about divestment, but they're certainly raising the issue. Your take on it?
What's ironic and I think a replication history is that for the first several months of the crisis, the genocide in Gaza, most of the protests were being organized by very large advocacy organizations, including CAIR, American Muslims for Palestine, the Jewish Voice for Peace, other organizations, and the protests were very, very controlled, very disciplined. They were following the rules, getting permits. They were very respectfully asking for something very simple: stop the killing. Ceasefire now. Just stop. Please stop the killing. Let's end the violence, get all the hostages and political prisoners released, and look at ending the occupation. Very simple demand on our government. Our government didn't want to listen. Our media outlets didn't want to listen. No one wanted to listen when we were being very respectful and ask for something very simple. And now what you have is young people on college campuses saying, look, we've had enough. We've been watching this unfold for 6 months. We're going to take matters in our own hands. We're going to be civilly disobedient. We're going to take over our campus yards. We are going to demand more than just a ceasefire. We want our schools to stop sending money to the Israeli government, stop investing in Israeli government ventures. So, the ironic thing is that if our political and national leaders had just listened to the protests that were happening last fall, we could have avoided all this. But they didn't want to, and so now young people are stepping up and taking over. And the same thing happened, I think, in the 60s when you had major black organizations, NAACP, Dr. King, leading these very well-controlled protests, very peaceful, very disciplined. And it made some progress, but it didn't get the ultimate result of systematic change as far as young people were concerned. So then you had a new generation of very aggressive, very bold young black leaders who said, we're going to take matters into our own hands, and we're going to be very aggressive and demanding even more. And then you had a lot of strife and conflict coming about. So I think that students are leading a very organic movement right now. It's very decentralized. It's not something that anyone can control. Like we at CAIR, we're trying to communicate with these student leaders, give them some assistance and backup and resources and guidance, but they're doing their own thing. They have taken the reins of the horse, and they're doing their own thing. So I think universities and schools have to realize that there is no putting this genie back in the bottle. They're going to have to treat their kids with respect, work with them on their demands, including divestment. There's no reason to have millions of dollars invested in the Israeli government. And that's something that these schools can solve. The schools can't make Joe Biden stop the genocide, but these schools can divest their money from Israeli government ventures, and they should.
You mentioned MLK a moment ago, and a little birdie told me, I think I got this correct. Did you matriculate at Morehouse?
Of course, and I'm grateful for that eternally.
As they say, you can tell a Morehouse man, you just can't tell him much.
I try to be more humble than our reputation allows. But yeah,
I want to come to Dr. King, and I want to come to Morehouse in a moment because we just heard an announcement this week that President Biden is headed to Morehouse to give the commencement. And you'll never convince me that when he gets there, he will not talk about these protests on college campuses. And I'm already feeling some sort of way about you choosing a black college to advance that narrative. We're going to talk about that part since you are a Morehouse graduate in just a moment. But let me just ask you, I'll tee up two things. I'm looking at my clock. Let me tee up two things, and we'll talk about it when we come forward. One, we'll get to the Morehouse piece and what it means that in this moment, the president is going to a black college where I suspect this issue of free speech on college campuses and these protests will be covered somewhere in his remarks. And what does that mean? That you're talking to an audience. There are people who are asking and calling for these black male graduates to walk out during the speech that President Biden is going to give as their form of protest. It's going to get funky, particularly, potentially, I should say, at Morehouse in a few days. We'll talk about that. But beyond Morehouse, I want to talk about the impact of these protests on these students. I've been reading articles that these students face expulsion when they are arrested for engaging in these protests. They face expulsion. They may lose their housing. They may lose their scholarships. These students are taking some pretty significant risk, if these articles are correct, when they decide to engage in these protests and to be arrested on these campuses. A great deal more to cover in the time we have left with Ahmed Mitchell of CAIR when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
From Leimert Park with love, this is Tavis Smiley.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
Watch out! You got me!
The galaxy is safe once again.
In the pretend universe, kids play with pretend guns. In the real world, it's up to us to make sure they don't get their hands on a real gun. If you have a gun in the house, keep it locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Safe gun storage saves lives. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.
Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan.
Hey guys, did you know there's a generic form of Viagra that works just the same but is 95% cheaper? And you can get it online at hims.com/joy. Through Hims, you'll get a free medical consultation to determine the ED medication that's best for you. Discreet shipping if prescribed, a 100% online process, and a range of treatment options, including trusted generic alternatives to the name brands, at up to 95% off. ED is personal, and at Hims, so is treating it. Just go to hims.com/joy and get connected to a licensed medical provider online for free, with zero copay, no expensive appointments, and no awkward face-to-face conversations. To start your free online visit, you need to go to this exclusive address, hims.com/joy. That's hims.com/joy for your free online visit, hims.com/joy.
Eggs are a staple in our diets, and there's only one egg with more delicious farm-fresh taste plus superior nutrition. Eggland's Best. With more vitamins, including 6 times more vitamin D and 10 times more vitamin E, plus 25% less saturated fat than ordinary eggs. Available in so many delicious varieties: classic, cage-free, and organic. Eggland's Best. Better taste, better nutrition, better eggs.
More honesty than you can handle.
More empowerment than you can imagine.
You're tuned in to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Edward Ahmed Mitchell of CAIR, the Council on American-Islamic Relations. Watching my time getting away from me, I want to run through a few things right quick. Let me start with this. I said a moment ago that I wanted to ask Edward, as I will right now, about the impact of these protests on students. Let me read a quick statement from, it's not really a statement, but a quick argument from ACLU about the way these students ought to be treated. I'm quoting now from the ACLU. Plans for coordinated student walkouts have been making national news and have already engendered disciplinary threats from some school administrators. Since the law in virtually all jurisdictions requires students to go to school, schools can typically discipline students for missing class, even if they're doing so to participate in a protest or otherwise express themselves. But what the school can't do is discipline students more harshly because they are walking out to express a political view or because school administrators don't support the views behind the protest. In other words, any disciplinary action for walking out cannot be a response to the content of the protest. Your thoughts, Edward?
So an important distinction here is whether or not it's a public university or a private university. Obviously, private universities do accept federal funding. That makes them, somewhat subject to federal regulations and laws. But the public universities in particular have to abide by the Constitution very clearly and cannot be suppressing speech on their campus simply because they don't like that. speech. So the other issue we're running into is that, students are very deliberately, in some cases, breaking school rules to protest. They're engaging in acts of civil disobedience. That is part of American history, not just to say, mother may I before you protest, but to peacefully engage in some civil disobedience. And normally schools would tolerate that up to a point. What's happening, though, now in places like Emory, UT Austin, where they sent in, this massive group of troopers, is they're not even tolerating the most mild acts of civil disobedience. And that's what's creating all of this conflict. Schools have to be willing to tolerate some level of civil disobedience on their campuses while threatening kids with expulsion and suspension. I'm not saying that schools don't have the right to discipline students if they violate school rules. They do. But the fact is that they wouldn't be exercising this level of force on kids if it was a different issue, right? If it was BLM after George Floyd was murdered, if it was some other topic. It's because the issue is Palestine and the schools don't want to tolerate speech about that they're cracking down so forcefully, and it's wrong.
Yeah, I mentioned the Trojans of USC earlier. And all their drama around the valedictorian whose speech was canceled. There's breaking news now on the other side of town, if you're in Los Angeles, where I sit right now, at UCLA. So I talked about the Trojans. Let me talk now about the Bruins. Here's breaking news. Students at UCLA in Westwood have established a Gaza solidarity camp today on their campus, joining thousands of pro-Palestinian protesters, I should say, across the country, calling for their universities to divest from Israel. So now UCLA, the Bruins have set up their Gaza solidarity camp, as I said at the top of this hour, and here's evidence in the hour that these protests continue to grow and to expand. This is unabated. More in our remaining moments with Edward Ahmed Mitchell when we come forward, specifically that conversation about Joe Biden on his way to Morehouse.
Unapologetically progressive. Unapologetically black. You're tapped into Tavis Smiley.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found BenefitsCheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. BenefitsCheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful they saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 believes in community empowerment. LA's 99 neighborhood councils form the grassroots level of the Los Angeles city government. The system was created to connect LA's diverse communities to City Hall. While neighborhood council board members are volunteers, they are also public officials elected to office by the members of their community. Neighborhood councils advocate on issues like homelessness, housing, land use, emergency preparedness, public safety, parks, transportation, and sustainability. They also provide local expertise on the delivery of city services to their various communities. Neighborhood councils are open to participation by anyone who is a part of the fabric of daily life in said community. This includes those who live, work, or own property or a business. If you are interested in stepping up to join your local neighborhood council, visit www.empowerla.org. That's empowerla.org. It's time to think globally, but act locally. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Hi, I'm Reverend Gerald, host of Urban Family Focus here on KBLA Talk 1580 on Saturday mornings at 7 a.m. In an effort to help reduce the impact of hypertension in our community, Providence is offering free hypertension assessments. The first 30 people to visit KBLA1580.com and use the link or QR code to register will receive 2 tickets to the Amazing Grace Conservatory presentation of Aladdin, A Whole New World for Real, at the Crenshaw Performing Arts Center, May 25th and 26th. Go to KBLA1580.com right now and be one of the first 30 to register for your hypertension screening and receive 2 tickets to Aladdin, compliments of Providence and KBLA Talk 1580. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Helping to make you the most knowledgeable person in your circle of friends. This is Tavis Smiley.
Got just a few minutes left here between now and the top of the hour with our guest, Ahmed Mitchell, who is Deputy Executive Director at the Council on American-Islamic Relations, CAIR. So we established earlier in this conversation, Everett, that you are a graduate of that fine institution in Atlanta called Morehouse. I've got a brother and a nephew who are also graduates of Morehouse, so shouting them out. But the president has announced that he's headed to Morehouse. And I don't want to get ahead of him, but this ain't my first rodeo. And I can tell you some of what's going to come out of his mouth when he gets to that campus. And I'm not sure I like the frame that I think this puts Morehouse in. That's me. What's your take?
So, yeah, I've been speaking about this with other alumni. I was at the school yesterday. Let me be respectful. I love Morehouse. I love my institution. I can understand why Morehouse would want the president of the United States to come back and speak at our campus again, right? It shows the importance of Morehouse. It's a good look in general to have the president there. But the fact is that Morehouse would never welcome any and all presidents to speak on our campus, right? I was at Morehouse when Hurricane Katrina happened, when the Iraq War was going on. I can tell you George W. Bush would not have been welcome on our campus in 2005. Donald Trump would not have been welcome at any point of his presidency on Morehouse's campus. So the school would make a judgment call about when it's appropriate and not appropriate to have a president come. It is completely inappropriate to have Joe Biden come and speak at Morehouse, the school of Martin Luther King, the leading proponent of nonviolence, at a time that the president is enabling what many students believe to be a genocide overseas, and especially in an election year. I just think I understand Morehouse is saying we invited him in September 2023 before everything happened. Fine, but it is what it is right now. It is creating a horrible situation where kids are going to be at risk of being disciplined if they protest, where parents who are going to want to come to celebrate this important moment for their families are going to be distracted by the president and whatever protest happens. It's just a horrible, horrible situation. And I think the school needs to consider, if they're not going to just cancel it altogether, reschedule. Say, Mr. President, come back next year. Not a good time right now. Maybe the genocide will be over. Maybe things will be different. But I'm just so concerned not only about the damage that this does to Morehouse's reputation, but about the distraction from the students who should be able to celebrate their graduation without having to engage in protest at their graduation.
So I went in on USC. Let me echo your sentiment. I'm not a Morehouse graduate, but I sent a lot of money to Morehouse. Trust me, I sent money there to get my brother through. So I think I can speak on this.
I got you.
At the end of the day, here again, I think it's another tone deaf decision. It's just tone deaf. To your point, and I can't say it any more brilliantly or eloquently than you said it. This is the school from which Dr. King matriculated, graduated. He is our Prince of Peace on the mortal side. Not comparing him to Jesus, but he was a prince, and all he talked about was peace. So don't misquote what I'm saying here about Dr. King. Not comparing him to Jesus. My point is your point, that this is the place where King walked these hallowed halls and walked these grounds. He is obviously the most notable graduate of this institution, and to have this president in this moment speak on that campus, I think has King turning in his grave. I that's my sentiment. I haven't written a book about Dr. King. I think I can say that with some authority. But again, it was a tone-deaf decision at USC, I think, to cancel this valedictorian. It's a tone-deaf decision by Morehouse to not ask the president to come at a later time. So Everett and I agree in that regard, and I'm out of time, so I'll shut up. His name is Ahmed Mitchell. He is the Deputy Executive Director of the Council on American-Islamic Relations, CAIR. I'm delighted in having him on this program. Everett, all the best to you. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you, Tavis. Have a great day, God willing.
Same to you. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. The abortion issue is heating up in the U.S. The Supreme Court Wednesday heard a closely watched case over whether Idaho's near-total abortion ban conflicts with a federal law requiring hospitals to provide emergency care. Also on Wednesday, his church, where close to 70 members of Clark Atlanta's band will be playing outside Friday. The African-American music producer who founded the musical collective